Are we really happy here with this lonely game?
Music 292, weeks 5 and 6. Part 3, notating lyrics. I'll start with my usual overview to say that pop styles are not all the same, but I'm also going to say this week that we're going to talk about how to notate lyrics. I'm not going to talk about the creative side of creating lyrics. I'm going to talk about the nitty-gritty of how to actually put them on paper. And what I'd like to say as well is that this is applicable to many genres. So what I'm about to teach you is applicable to pop, but it's also applicable to choral music, for example. Let's get started. There are particular rules for notating lyrics that are used in both popular and classical or choral styles. These rules are meant to make it easier for singers to sight read in particular, but also to know the proper word pronunciation. In English, this is a particular issue because our vowels are not consistently pronounced. We need to really see the syllable division of a word, and we need to see it accurately to know how to actually pronounce each individual syllable. Unfortunately, the rules are not 100% standardized. So you'll see some variation, and this particularly comes up in terms of consonant placement. Some publishers and some composers decide to group consonants with the previous syllable, some decide to do it with the later syllable. And there's a certain amount of flex within that, where it's just not specified by sort of the standard set of rules that are known about this. The other thing that causes problems in this area is that due to the widespread access of music notation software, a lot of people are now self-publishing music. And many of these people are completely unaware that there are standard publication rules for notating lyrics. And I'm sure you've probably encountered this in pieces that you've sung before, particularly in choirs. It's one of these things where you don't really notice it's an issue until there's a pretty specific problem with it. You're also going to see some variation on how lyrics are notated based on different dialects of a language. And I'll talk about that a little bit as we go forward in this video. But one really common example is in French. In sung French, some older pronunciations of the language are often used. The one that's particularly notable is the including sounded final E's in words. So when you have the E at the end of a word in French, in spoken French that's normally not pronounced. In sung French that normally is pronounced. So again, there is some variation that happens here. Let's take a look at a few basic rules that will help you in notating your lyrics. First, all text should be subdivided into syllables. No more than one syllable should be used per note. If you want to use more than one syllable of text per note, you're going to subdivide that note. So rather than writing it as an eighth note, you would divide it into 2/16 to give you space to fit 2 syllables, for example. The score that I've got below actually illustrates this pretty well at its beginning. We can see are, we, really. Each one of those syllables gets its own individual note. There's also a fairly standard rule that doubled consonants in the middle of a word are usually split into separate syllables. We can see, for example, in really and happy here, the double L becomes the split between the syllables, and the double P becomes the split between the syllable and happy. It's not necessarily how we pronounce it in English. If I'm going to say happy, I'm saying ha-pee. But in terms of singing, again, it helps us to understand how to actually pronounce the vowel for each of the syllables. Another rule is that all syllables should contain at least one sounding vowel. What I mean by that is that silent vowels may not be the only vowel in a syllable. For example, if I'm taking a look at lonely game, in lone, the ending E of that syllable is actually silent. So it's okay to group that in this case with the O that we have previously in the same syllable. In game as well, the A sounds, but the E is silent. I wouldn't want to write game because we don't pronounce that E at the end of the word in English. At this point, I'm going to take a quick aside though, because different dialects of English actually subdivide syllables quite differently in different words. Take the word every, for example. In my dialect, the way that I speak English, I pronounce this word every. And so I'm essentially eliminating the E in the second half of that word. I'm eliding those things together. So for me, as a Canadian English speaker from Northern Ontario, this word contains 2 syllables. However, it's quite common to also see this word subdivided as every. And this is the style that you might hear in the UK, for example, or you might hear in more formal varieties of English. So neither one of these is wrong. It's just a choice between using one dialect of English versus another dialect of English. And you're going to see quite a bit of variation pop up in scores because of these differences. Back to our rules, we're going to notate syllable divisions with hyphens, word separations with a space, and word continuation with an underscore. And we can see all of those things happening in the example that I provided. We can see a hyphen, for example, between the syllables of really. We can see the spaces between are, we, really. And we can see the continuation underscore, for example, if you take a look at the ending of bar 11 going to bar 12, the we actually happens over 2 different pitches. The line continuation is showing you that that keeps going. In vocal music, slurs are actually also commonly used to indicate syllable continuation. You probably know the term melisma from music history class as well, which means the same thing. So be aware that in vocal music, slurs are often used for syllable notation rather than phrasing of the music like they are in other repertoires, like woodwinds, for example, or piano. So those are your basic rules for syllable notation. Hopefully that'll help you a little bit as you go into your pop music assignment and you do some composing of your own. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
In a masquerade.